Welcome to the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking Paper Play Activities. My name is Anna and I'm the Education Curator for the museum. And today I'll be showing you how to make concentric squares into a three-dimensional sculpture here. To get started today, you really only need a few materials: a pencil, a ruler, an 8 by 8 inch sheet of paper, or 9 by 9, or larger, smaller, up to you, and an X-Acto knife. You can make scissors work, but it will be a little bit more difficult. So to get started, I've already made some measurements on my paper. At the top of my paper and at the bottom of my paper, I have measured every half an inch. So half an inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inches, 2, 2.5, 3, etc., all the way across the paper. Same thing across the top. And then I have drawn a line through the center of the paper at that half-inch mark that marks the center. And then on the side edges, I have measured every 1/4 of an inch. And this is because the sculpture here is actually offset by a 1/4 of an inch. So even though these pieces are half an inch wide, they're offset by a 1/4 of an inch, and that's what connects those concentric squares. So you can see on my top left-hand corner of the paper, I've measured a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch, and then I put a darker orange mark here at half an inch because that's going to be my starting mark for my left-hand side. On my right-hand mark, I've started down 3/4 of an inch, so 3/4 marks down, and made my orange mark. So I'm starting offset. So I have offset my paper where I'm starting at half an inch on this side and 3/4 of an inch on the opposite side. And then I've made a little orange mark every half an inch into the center of the paper, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 marks. And I did the same from the bottom. Now the bottom is also offset. So if I started at half an inch down on this side, I'm gonna leave 3/4 of an inch here at the bottom. If I started with 3/4 of an inch here at the top, I'm gonna leave half an inch here at the bottom. And I have, again, half an inch, 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 until I've reached the center of the paper. And I'm leaving those 1/4 of an inch marks because I'll need them for reference as I make my lines across on the other side. So now I'm gonna get started making my lines. So I'm gonna line up my ruler with my marks, and then I'm gonna make my first line. I'm gonna move half an inch in, and this line's gonna be a little bit shorter. Kind of eyeballing to that orange mark. And I'm gonna keep going all the way into the center. And I may have to come back and touch up my lines later, but that's a pretty good starting point, and I'm gonna repeat on the other side. So my paper is going to look like this. You can see there's a slight offset in the lines because I started at half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, and a 3/4 of an inch, and half an inch. So half an inch, 3/4, 3/4, half an inch in between keeps my lines offset. Now I'm gonna draw the lines going the opposite direction. And I'm just turning my paper to make it easier. So I'm gonna start at my first measurement, which is half an inch down on this side, lining up with 1/2 inch across, which is not on the orange mark because it's offset. And I'm just going to keep going down every 1/2 inch. Stopping when I get to the corner mark. Now I might have drawn too far or not too far enough on a couple of them, so I can go back and connect and erase any marks where I went too far. I'm going to connect the lines on the other side now. Starting at my 3/4 marks on the opposite side. And again, if I don't have a point that connects all the way, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it to fill in those lines, because I'll come back and use my ruler when I cut it next time. And now for the other side. So my offset on this corner is 3/4 inch, and it'll also be 3/4 inch on this opposite side. My offset on this corner is 1/2 inch, just so it's 1/2 inch on the opposite side. Now that I've gotten my squares all drawn, I am ready to use my X-Acto here to help me cut out along those lines. So I'm gonna cut every line that I've drawn here except my center line. So when I'm cutting, I'm just cutting on these pencil lines I have made. And you may notice I'm using my ruler as a straight edge and leaving just enough of the pencil visible here that I know how long of a line I need to cut. And if for some reason you don't cut all the way, you can just extend. Now that I've got all of my horizontal cuts, I'm gonna come back and get my cuts the other direction. Now be careful when you make these cuts that you're not cutting past your center line. It's tempting to want to cut all the way down, but remember these lines are offset, so stop at your middle line. So I'm going to start by going from the center line down to my corner, and then the next line, stopping at the center. Once you're finished cutting, you can pop out the cuts to see if they got stuck anywhere. If you forgot to cut a spot, you can come back and trim it. So now that you have all of your pieces cut and separated, you're ready to start bending them into place to make your concentric square sculpture. So I'm going to start by taking every other piece, starting with the furthest outside all the way towards the center line, and then the opposite every other piece on the other side, and bending them towards my center line to create a V form. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side, making sure that they are again the opposite offset square pieces, and bend it towards the center line creating an X with your concentric squares. And then you are finished. And if you want to add a piece of string and hang it up so that it twirls, you can absolutely do that. Thank you for joining us today for Paper Play.